It's not a very exciting building, is it? Kind of a disused warehouse in the middle of an industrial estate. But inside that building is one of the greatest treasures of bushcraft. This is a real Aladdin's cave. It's the collection centre for the Canadian Canoe Museum in Peterborough. These are the canoes not yet on show. And there are over 500 of them from all over the world, ranging from dugout canoes to pleasure craft from the 1930s. But if there's one type of canoe that epitomises bushcraft above all others, it has to be this type down here. These are birch bark canoes. The hull is made from the skin of the tree itself, spread with a frame of cedar, and the whole thing lashed together with roots. They're icons of bushcraft, and they reflect their manufacturer's intimate and detailed knowledge of the natural world. For me, these are the finest craft people have ever created. And in this program, I'm going to learn how to make one. The canoe I'd be building follows a traditional design of the Algonquin people, made from birch and cedar. I'd be building it with one of the few people left who knows how to make them, Pinock Smith, who comes from a family of canoe builders. He lives and works on a reservation to the north of Ottawa. Canada is 25% water, and its network of lakes and rivers mean that for thousands of years the canoe was the most important way to get around. Most birch bark canoes built today are showpieces designed for museums. Our boat was to be different. It was going to be a working canoe made using only traditional methods. Pinock, when you're building the canoe, do you work to any dimensions?
No. Like the canoes are not, it's not exact. I've never seen my uncle or anybody using a tape to measure these things. They just worked with the wood, and if it happened, to be a little thinner one place or other, it didn't seem to matter at all, and it would work good.
I think that's the lovely thing about all these sorts of projects, is that you have to actually listen to what the wood is telling you and just go with the flow. Very different to modern carpentry.
Quite a bit. This one here, it's very free.
Traditionally, these boats were built quickly. We had just over a week to complete ours, but these are slow and steady procedures. The first task was splitting wood into long strips to make the gunnels. That's the bit that runs along the top of each side of the canoe. In England there was actually a law until well into the 1900s that said that all government furniture had to be made from riven wood that was split, because it followed the grain, because there were cheap manufacturers cutting across the grain. Typical of bushcraft, the whole process is based on a deep understanding of the properties of the materials we were using.
There it came out. One piece.
That's not bad at all.
It's not too bad.
With each new split, you need to pause, explore, and reassess the wood you're dealing with.
They've been in my garage.
Ooh. What I'm doing is shaping this piece of wood. I've got to smooth it down and make it to the right dimensions. This needs to be about a finger thick and several fingers wide with a gentle taper, as this is going to form the gunnel of the canoe. To do that, I've used the axe to do the rough shaping out, which is a tool I'm most happy with. But now I'm finishing off using the crook knife which is virtually a unique tool to this part of the world, and it's absolutely ideal for smoothing. It's kind of a cross between a draw knife, a plane and a gouge. These skills were once commonplace, but as I found with so many traditional skills across the world, things are changing.
I remember when I was young, in this area here, canoes, everybody's making canoes. It would have been funny if you didn't know how. It would have been strange you didn't know how to build a canoe 60 years ago here. You know, at least have the knowledge of how it comes together and stuff. And today, even the natives on the reserve would come up to me and say, you know, they're surprised that I built canoes. That's how much of our culture we lost in 50, 60 years. You know, it was... Today, there's some people you meet, as far as they're concerned, a canoe comes from a sporting shop. You know, there's no such thing as going into the bush and...
Make one for yourself. No, you don't use rulers and measures when you make these canoes, but so far we haven't compared any of the pieces at all.
Well, they'll match up together after. Trust.
I admire your confidence. That's generations of canoe making experience speaking. This whole area is alive with the spirit of the canoe. One of the most famous canoeists of modern times came from just down the road. Like me, he wasn't an Indian, but he earned a special place in the history of canoeing. Bill Mason.
It's a feeling of almost euphoria to get out here, and I've got a canoe load of food and I don't have to be back by any set time. And it's just the greatest feeling of freedom I know.
Bill Mason really was the doyen of the open canoe. His enthusiasm that came through all his films and books was simply infectious. He inspired a whole generation, including myself, to go out, pick up a paddle and go out into the wilderness in canoes. Bill Mason died in 1988, but his children are both immersed in the world of the canoe. Daughter Becky divides her time between art and teaching canoeing to a whole new generation.
My dad, he passed on the love of wilderness. Canoeing, yes, it was important, but he didn't force us to go canoeing. So he just said, this is a vehicle. Would you like to come along? And of course, as a kid, you want to come along. We have so many cities, so much concrete, and you don't think about the wilderness very much, or canoeing, or anything much except money and cars and where you're going to go as quickly as possible. And the canoe makes you slow down. And that's why I like that travel, is it makes everything slow down. And then you look more and you learn more. The canoe means beautiful freedom, to be out on a trip for 10 days, just gliding along in the water, camping where you want, and then pitching your tent, using it as a vehicle. And also, I teach canoeing, and I like it. I love the art of paddling.
Becky is at home with all aspects of canoeing, including many traditional techniques passed down from First Nation peoples.
I taught a gentleman, a First Nation person from James Bay, the Indian stroke, and he went back home. And his grandmother, he was very excited, and he went home and he said, look what I learnt. And she started crying because it was exactly the same as her father or grandfather had taught her. And it's just like a reconnection. And canoeing, you asked me, well, is it going to be here forever? Is it going to evolve? But it's just extraordinary. Canoeing doesn't evolve. It's just here. And we just pass it along.
Sentiments I share entirely. It's a way of travelling that brings you closest to the world of bushcraft. Learning how to make one, I felt I was joining that process of sharing knowledge. Well, there we go. It's the end of the day. To any bystander watching, it might seem that all we've been doing here is creating a mass of shavings. But in fact, we've made 7 different parts for the canoe. We've made both halves of the gunnels, the 2 bits to each side, and we've been making a cap that goes on top of that. We've made 3 of those. Although we'll only need 2, we've made 1 spare